There are no shadows in the Underdark. Only through years on the surface have I come to understand the significance of that seemingly minute fact. The significance of the contrast between light and darkness. There are no shadows in the Underdark, no areas of mystery where only the imagination can go. What a marvelous thing is a shadow. I have seen my own silhouette walk under me as the sun rode high. I have seen a gopher grow to the size of a large bear, the light low behind him, spreading his ominous silhouette far across the ground. I have walked through the woods at twilight, my gaze alternating between areas catching the last rays of day, leafy green slipping to grey and darkening patches where only the mind could go. Might a monster be there? An orc or a goblin? Or might a hidden treasure as magnificent as a lost enchanted sword lay within the sheltering gloom? When I walk the woods at twilight, my imagination walks beside me, heightening my senses and opening my mind to endless possibilities. But there are no shadows in the Underdark, and no room for fanciful imagining. All and everywhere is gripped in a brooding, continual predatory hush and a real, ever-present danger. One cannot walk the corridors of the Underdark with his imagination beside him. To imagine an enemy behind one stone might well blind a person to the very real enemy behind another. To slip into a daydream is to lose that edge of readiness, and in the Underdark, to be unwary is to die. There are no shadows in the Underdark. There is no room for imagination in the Underdark. It is a place for alertness, but not aliveness. A place with no room for hopes and for dreams. Drizzt du Urden, Year of the Prince, 1357, DR from Starless Night. Today, we delve further into the Underdark to explore more creatures, ecology, and famous landmarks in this vast realm of unending darkness. The Derro are a degenerate, evil race, least like the other dwarven races and subraces. They are short and stocky, with skin the colour of an iced-over lake. Their sickly, pale yellow hair hangs straight over staring, pupilless eyes. Derro facial features have both human and dwarven characteristics, and their rough skin is spotted with short, coarse tufts of hair. Derro never willingly expose themselves to direct sunlight. It nauseates them and can kill them within a matter of days. Derro dwell primarily in the middle and lower reaches of the Underdark, although small warbands occasionally raid surface communities. Although most of the stout folk are inherently non-magical, the Derro are ruled by savants. These powerful spellcasters have sage-like knowledge in many areas. Every 20 years or so, the Derro mount an all-out war against creatures of the Underdark. Each uniting war winnows out the weakest members of the race, creating a focal point for racial identity and inducing general terror. Cloakers, also known as lurkers, resemble common black cloaks with rows of black eye spots running down their backs like buttons. Two ivory-coloured claws on the upper edge of a cloaker's form are easily mistaken for bone clasps. The white underside of a cloaker bears a horrific horned face composed of two glowing red eyes and a ravenous maw. Cloakers fly with blinding speed, engulfing prey within their folds. While devouring victims, cloakers defend themselves with their tails. In addition, they emit subsonic moans with varying effects that induce numbing unease, fear, nausea, weakness, or paralyzation. Cloakers also manipulate magical light and darkness to obscure prey's vision or produce precise images. Cloaker thought processes are utterly alien to most other life forms. As such, only mages who devote long hours to training their minds in the arcane discipline can understand them. The Svirfeblin, also known as deep gnomes, are deep-dwelling gnomes. These gnomes are slightly smaller than their rock gnome cousins, but their thin, wiry, gnarled frames are just as strong. Svirfeblin have rock-coloured skin ranging in hue from medium brown to brownish grey. and their eyes are grey. Male gnomes are completely bald, while female deep gnomes have stringy, grey hair. While some non-gnome sages claim that the Forgotten Folk are the creation of Netherese arcanists seeking to create a race of perfect servants. Careful scholars note the existence of gnome artifacts long before the appearance of the Forgotten Folk during the Silver Age of Netheril. Deep gnomes have long dwelt in the upper and middle reaches of the Underdark, wherever veins of gemstones and rubies are found. While deep gnomes have never dominated vast swaths of the Underdark, they are difficult to dislodge and can dwell in close proximity to rival enclaves of mutually hostile races without being driven out or enslaved. The Kuo-toa are known derisively as gogglers and are an ancient race of intelligent fishmen. They look like paunchy humans covered in scales, topped with a fish head. They have huge eyes, undersized arms and legs, and long, partially webbed feet and hands. Kuo-toa are typically pale grey in coloration. Their skin tone darkens when they are angry and pales when they are frightened. Adult Kuo-toa are amphibious. Ancient legends suggest that they evolved amphibious qualities and colonized shores and islands of the upper world before being driven back into the sea by humans and demi-humans. Other tales suggest that their deep hatred for surface dwellers is misplaced and stems from the earliest appearances of modified land dwellers who colonized their underwater domain. Gold dwarves have dusky skin tones, sometimes colored deep red instead of cinnamon brown and dark, and usually black hair. They tend to be shorter and more heavy-set than shield dwarves. Gold dwarves are found primarily in the southern and eastern reaches of the upper Underdark. Most gold dwarves gravitated to the tunnels and caverns surrounding the Great Rift, but small enclaves are still found as far afield as the mountains of Halrua, or deep beneath the Thayan plateaus. Gold dwarves are powerful, proud and xenophobic, shunning even other dwarves and travelling little in the surface world. Their numbers have not declined as quickly as those of their northern kin, but gold dwarves are still locked in the same self-destructive cycle of warfare against the other Underdark races that has led to the collapse of many northern kingdoms. Shield dwarves are the prototypical dwarves, found primarily in the western and northern reaches of the upper Underdark. They have long since emigrated from the ancient caverns of Shanatar in the southwest. The number of lost shield dwarf holds far outstrips the number extant today. Shield dwarves have solid alliances with the deep gnomes in particular. Relationships with the Duergar are uniformly hostile and often break out into open conflict. Darrow relations are even worse. Shield dwarves deeply hate Aboleth, Drow, Illithids, Kuo-toa, and other slaving races. They trade with them only reluctantly. Ropers resemble pillar-shaped rock outcroppings with a single yellow eye, a carnivorous maw ringed with sharp teeth, and small bumps covering their bodies. Each bump can shoot out strong, sticky strands. Although most ropers hunt alone throughout the Underdark, clusters of ropers have been seen in certain caverns along well-travelled tunnels in the northern and central reaches of the upper Underdark. Roper relatives include Storo-pairs, which have a stonier, less flexible exterior, and tentacles that are always extended. Troglodytes are a warlike race of carnivorous reptilian humanoids who dwell in natural subterranean caverns in the upper reaches of the Underdark. They stand about 6 feet tall, covered in roughened leather scales, and have a toothy lizard-like head. They are natural chameleons, but greyish-brown is the most common skin colour. Troglodytes secrete an oil that saps strength from humans and demi-humans. These evil lizards are believed to be descendants of the sauroid creator race. Once spread throughout the realms below, they have gradually been supplanted by more vigorous and powerful races, and are now a minor power. Surviving in the Upper Dark is relatively easy compared to the Middle and Lower Dark. Luminescent flora and Pharisrus provide occasional light, though not consistently enough, to allow most surface races to travel without an independent light source. Vents from the surface keep air fresh and moving in passages, so the air quality is rarely an issue. Many water sources are guarded or fouled, but quite a few are both clean and open for anyone to use. Many different types of fungi are edible and the Underdark equivalent of small game. Rats, dire rats, lizards, and giant vermin can easily be found in the tunnels. Domesticated animals, such as deep roe, that can also be found near most major population centres. The Middledark is, at its best, worse than the harshest surface deserts. Wild resources are hard to find, and most of those that do exist have already been placed under guard by someone else. Glowing fungi and lichens are less common at this depth than they are in the Upper Dark. They can be easily cultivated, but most concentrations of them appear in cities, not in the wild. Air tends to be stale, but breathable, though poisonous fumes choke out normal air in a few areas. In many places, water is scarce, and a large supply is well guarded. Creatures living at this depth get most or all of their water from the fluids in other creatures they eat. Food is the most plentiful of the necessities at this depth, but even that becomes an issue at the lower end of the depth range. No alliance is permanent in the Middledark. Some communities maintain wary trading partnerships with others. It is understood that if one party ever grows stronger than the other, the terms of the partnership will change, perhaps drastically. Even in the most open of Middledark cities, newcomers can expect to be challenged physically or otherwise, unless they make a point display of power upon entry. The Lower Dark is a strange realm warped by severe environmental and magical forces. The problems that pervade the rest of the Underdark intensify here. Resources are scarce, and control of them is continually contested. Air does filter down this far, but it is frequently stale and occasionally toxic because of the geothermal fumes. Water is virtually non-existent, and the little that is present is well guarded. Food cannot be found in the wild, unless the hunter has no aversion to cannibalism. Exacerbating these problems still further are numerous areas of wild and dead magic. Though Farazres is rare here, the weave in the Lower Dark is a snarled and tangled mess. The darkness at this depth is so deep that it seems to actively dislike light. Natural light sources fail with unnerving frequency. Magical light sources draw attackers like flies to rotten fruit. In some places, the shadows cast in areas of light are unnatural, too large or too small for the light source. Even beings with dark vision see a flickering of dark around the edges of their vision, as if the darkness were trying to drown out any sight at all. At various depths in the Lower Dark, portals to the plane of shadow become a new hazard for travelers. Some sages theorize that the Underdark never ends. It simply becomes the plane of shadow at some immeasurable depth. Why would any creature with intelligence or common sense live in such a terrible environment? Some races have lived here for generation upon generation, and the Lower Dark is simply their home. Other creatures settle here to take advantage of the Lower Dark's unique magical properties, rare ores or shelter from the hated sun. Still, others view a sojourn in the Lower Dark as a temporary solution. Since the dead magic areas and hostile territory may be a wanted criminal's most expedient means of avoiding capture, elemental creatures and creatures with elemental heritage, such as Genasi, generally do well in the Lower Dark. In particular, earth elementals and salt mephitis find the deep underground to be an ideal environment. Fire elementals, Aza, and salamanders love Lower Dark regions with active volcanoes. Deepspawn are horrible creatures that give birth to monstrosities of all sorts. They surround themselves with armies of their spawned minions. Deepspawn are found in all portions of the Underdark, but the largest, most wicked, and most fecund of the species seem to hail from the lower dark. Avalakias are thankfully few in number and are master necromancers and shape changers. In its true form, an Avalakia is a 10-foot monstrosity combining insectile, octopoid, and worm-like features, devoted to the elevation of deities of decay and undeath. An Avalakia nest is surrounded by a shambling army of undead under the monster's control. These creatures occasionally ally with aboleths or mind flayers, but they regard humanoids as nothing more than fodder for creating more undead. Home to the deep realm of the Gold Dwarves, the Great Rift is the largest, strongest, and wealthiest of all the dwarven realms on the surface of Faerun or below. The Great Rift serves as a bridge between the realms below and the surface lands. While it is not especially deep at about half a mile, the caverns and mines delved into its walls extend deep into the Underdark. Merchants coming up from below are carefully watched. Drow, Duergar, and other such sinister folk can and do come to the Great Rift to trade. The Gold Dwarves deal fairly with them, provided that they return the courtesy. The cities of the Gold Dwarves surround the Great Rift, rather like apartments looking out onto a common courtyard. Miles of cavern corrals, caves given over to fungus cultivation, and subterranean lakes stocked with cave fish extend from each of these cities. Beyond this zone of civilization lies the Deep Wild, a vast region of wild caves patrolled by the Gold Dwarves, but not claimed or settled by them. Many dangerous monsters lurk in the recesses of the Deep Wild. Ambitious settlers occasionally establish homesteads with the intention of mining rich areas of the Deep Wild, only to be driven back by ferocious monsters of the area. The Dark Lake is actually a series of flooded caves connected by short, sloped tunnels. Some portions of its area are vast and open, spanning dozens of miles at a stretch. The whole lake is more than 100 miles across and 2 miles from top to bottom. Thousands of years ago, the dwarves of Gracklstugh widened many of the tunnels and built a series of locks into them. This allowed all the caverns to be traversed by large, shallow keel boats. Because of its proximity to this city and Menzoberranzan, the Dark Lake has become a highway for trade in the area. The Dark Lake gets its name from the unnatural darkness of its waters. Magical light sources cannot penetrate its depths to more than 10 feet. The ceiling above the lake is generally about 30 feet high above the waterline, although in some caves the ceiling is as high as 300 feet. A number of Kuotoas run a ferry service around the Dark Lake. No one knows where these creatures come from, but their service is reliable and reasonably priced. Portals that exist both above and below the waterline reputedly lead to various points on the surface. The lake's water is safe to drink after purification, but swimming in the Dark Lake is not advisable because of the creatures that reside in its depths. Gracklstugh is the city of blades and seat of the Duergar Deep Kingdom. This city is the strongest Grey Dwarf realm in the North Dark, and arguably, in all, the Underdark. The ceiling is perpetually covered with thick, reeking smoke that rises from the city's countless forges and smelters. The Duergar smiths who live here turn out quality weapons and armor of all kinds. Most of their wares are for sale, and their largest markets are other Duergar and Drow. The population of the city sits around 27,000 free citizens, with a majority of those being Duergar, some stone giants, and 14,000 slaves who are mostly made up of goblins, dwarves, orcs, and deep gnomes. Below the Evermoors, the bustling Duergar city straddles a narrow rift known as Laduga's Furrow. The north end of the settlement is a pebbly beach on the Dark Lake. The city's outlying districts and fungus fields occupy the tunnels for miles around, pushing the total population of the Deep Kingdom to around 90,000 Duergar and another 60,000 slaves. Like other major Underdark communities, the city is strong in trade. The Duergar usually prefer to carry their wares out to markets elsewhere, rather than welcome external traders. Caravans containing top-quality weapons armor and other metal goods constantly leave the city for Menzoberranzan, Skullport, and Ultul. The City of Blades earned its reputation for quality weapons, so no one complains to the Duergar's faces about the markup for transportation costs. The city's magical defenses are weak, but the Deep Kingdom boasts the best army in the Underdark. Thousands of trained veterans armed and armored with superior dwarven steel. Each trade or craft practiced in the city is the domain of a specific clan. Important trades, such as foundry work, are the province of several competing clans. The families that govern each clan comprise the city's nobility, and the leader of a clan is known as a laird. Unlike the drow houses, Duergar clans do not engage in endless vendettas and schemes of advancement. Grey dwarves, who find themselves at the bottom of the pecking order, tend to resign themselves to their fate or work harder to advance, rather than plotting to pull down their betters. The power in Gracklestach lies somewhere with the lairds of the great clans, the throne, and the scheming Darrow savants that live within the city. Shamath is a drow city ruled by wizards. The clerics of Lolth play only a minor role here, in stark contrast to many other Underdark cities, especially those controlled by drow. Religion is marginalized and even disdained in the city. The art is king here, and the wizards feel justified in their exclusivity. The quest for personal power made this city what it is and continues to drive it. This pride and superior attitude it engenders make other drow communities uneasy, but its power makes it impossible to dismiss. The city is also home to one of Faerun's most complete magic item markets. The city has a population of 12,000, with around 13,000 slaves, who are made up of mostly goblins, grimlocks, orcs, humans, and minotaurs. The city is ruled by a conclave made up of one representative from each college of arcane specialization, and one that represents wizards who do not specialize. This includes those who study stranger paths of magic, such as deep diviners and elemental savants. Shamath lacks the noble houses of most other drow cities, but the arcane colleges fill much the same role. Each college has assumed certain privileges and duties within the city. This arrangement has produced a tangled web of responsibility that can be difficult to unravel. As an example, the College of Abjuration is charged with the immediate defense of the city, so it maintains the city guard and provides soldiers to garrison the city gates. The College of Evocation is charged with scattering threats outside the city walls, so it maintains soldiers that patrol the surrounding tunnels. The College of Enchantment is in charge of the slave markets and overseers, so it sponsors guard detachments who scour Shamath, inside and out, for signs of slave unrest or escapes. Each college dedicates certain members to defense, and each considers it a matter of pride to top the other colleges in defensive measures. The layers of arcane defense in the rock around the city make it nearly impregnable. The most formidable of them consist of spells that harden the stone, lock down the city in a continual dimensional anchor, and redirect teleport spells cast by outlanders. Golems, shield guardians, elementals, summoned creatures, undead and animated objects are quite common here. Surface elves, humans, and deep Imaskari are not only never kept as slaves by citizens of Shamath, but any individual from one of these races who displays wizardly knowledge is considered free, regardless of who comes looking for them. Since only drow can be citizens of the city, this policy has created a small second-class ghetto of human and deep Imaskari residents who are free, but not citizens. The near-complete absence of Faraz Res around the city makes Shamath an easy destination for teleport spells. Teleporting into the city's cavern is, and normally punishable, by confiscation of magic items, though certain important people are permitted to teleport there without penalty. Shamath is a complex city, and one, just like many cities in the Underdark, that has variation and mystery. Legends tell of a huge vault at the bottom of the Lower Dark, beneath Anorach, where tomb tappers deposit the magic items they take from other parts of Faerun. Whether or not this place is the legendary tomb of all magic, it certainly holds an enormous number of magic items. So many, in fact, that any adventurer who managed to breach its defenses would have to choose which items to leave behind. Sages tell us that the tomb demiplane possesses no gravity, erratic time variations, a magic impediment. Other reports detail a most dangerous denizen of the tomb, an ancient demolish only known as the Keeper of Thal. Drizzt Urden reads from Year of the Prince, 1357, Dr. Starless Night. Although conceivably one could pass within a few feet of a teeming Underdark enclave without knowing it, such an occurrence is rare. Like the cities above, subterranean settlements show signs of nearby population. Patrols, caravans, and mining operations are common, and few deep earth races allow interlopers to approach without challenge. In general, explorers from the surface world are wise to confine themselves to the upper Underdark, where reasonable amounts of interaction with the world above still exists. The middle Underdark is the domain of the main Underdark races, but these mostly see beings from the surface as slaves. The lower Underdark remains largely unknown. True alien societies thrive there, with cultures wholly incomprehensible to surface dwellers. I have spent little time there myself and would not recommend it to anyone else. Of course, I would not recommend you travel into the Underdark at all. The Underdark drowns in darkness inside the great world of Faerun, and is a place that fascinates and terrifies many adventurers. The networks of tunnels, yaks, chasms, stretches underground, and is a place that has developed an absolutely unique ecosystem. To travel to the Underdark is to be the very essence of insanity or bravery. One thing is for certain: within the Underdark, mysteries are waiting to be explored and mysterious creatures to discover. If you have any ideas on mysteries you want us to focus on, then leave a comment. Thanks for watching the video. We now have a Patreon, so if you would like to support the growing channel, head over. The link is in the description below. Like and subscribe. See you all on the next video.